The massive alien ship appeared in Earth's outer solar system on a Tuesday morning. It was bigger than any human-made vessel, dark metal stretching for miles with strange glowing sections that pulsed like a heartbeat. The ship moved slowly toward Earth. Ignoring all radio signals sent from the planet below, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human defense ship Unity, watching the alien vessel through the main screen. His crew worked quietly around him, checking weapons and shields. They had trained for this day but hoped it would never come. First contact with aliens was supposed to be peaceful, full of wonder and friendship. This felt different. The alien ship stopped just outside Earth's defense grid. For 3 hours, nothing happened. Then the communications array lit up with an incoming message. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, the communications officer, worked quickly to decode the signal. "Captain, they're broadcasting on multiple frequencies," Amy said, her voice tight with worry. "The language is broken English, like they learned it from our television shows." "Put it through," Jake ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was harsh and mechanical. It spoke slowly, as if the words were difficult to form. "Humans of the third planet. We are the Galactic Council. You will surrender all weapons. You will give us control of your world. You have 1 day to obey. If you refuse, we will cleanse your planet." The bridge fell silent. Jake felt his heart pound in his chest. This was not the peaceful first contact humanity had dreamed about. This was a threat, pure and simple. "Send a response," Jake said. "Tell them we need to speak with our leaders." Amy worked at her console. "They're not answering, Captain. The message just repeats every 10 minutes. Back on Earth, Admiral Paul Carter received the news in his office deep underground. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years preparing Earth's defenses, hoping they would never be needed. Now that hope was gone. "How many ships do they have?" he asked his aide. "Just one, sir. But it's massive. Our sensors show it has enough firepower to destroy entire cities." Paul nodded slowly. He had read the reports about alien contact procedures. The plan was always to negotiate, to find common ground, to avoid conflict. But this alien message left no room for talk. It was surrender or die. He picked up his secure phone and called the president. The conversation was short, within an hour. Earth's leaders made their decision. On the alien ship, Commander Zextal waited for the human response. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms, wearing the dark uniform of the Galactic Council fleet. This was his 100th first contact mission. They always went the same way. First, he would make the demands. The primitive species would panic and argue among themselves. Then they would try to negotiate, offering resources or technology. Finally, they would surrender when they realized how hopeless their situation was. It had worked on over 200. World Zextile expected the humans to follow the same pattern. Their technology was primitive compared to Council standards. Their planet was small and isolated, had no allies and no knowledge of galactic politics. It should be simple. The human response came faster than expected. Instead of words, it was action. The attack came from 3 directions at once. Sleek human ships emerged from behind Earth's moon, moving faster than Zextal thought possible. They fired weapons he had never seen before. Long metal rods that moved at incredible speed. The first rod hit his ship's shield generator. The second struck the main weapons array. The third punched through the hull near the engine section. Alarms screamed throughout the vessel as systems failed, one after another. "Impossible," Zextal whispered. "They're primitives. They don't have this technology." His weapons officer, a nervous creature with too many eyes, looked up from his damaged console. "Commander, our shields are down to 30%. Our weapons are unlike anything in our database." "Turn fire," Zextal ordered. The Council. Ships' massive guns turned toward the human vessels. But the humans were already moving, dancing between the slow-moving energy beams like they were playing a game. Their small ships separated and attacked from different angles, making it impossible to target them all. Captain Morrison watched the battle from the Unity's bridge. The alien ship was huge and powerful, but it was also slow and predictable. Human ships were smaller and faster, built for quick strikes and rapid escapes. Target their engine section, he ordered. See how they like being stuck here. The human fleet concentrated their fire on the alien ship's rear section. More metal rods slammed into the vessel, followed by explosive missiles that tore through the damaged hull. The alien ship shuddered and began to list to one side. On the alien bridge, Zextal realized he was in serious trouble. His ship was badly damaged and his crew was panicking. These humans fought like nothing he had ever encountered. They were aggressive, coordinated, and utterly without fear. Send a message to the council, he ordered. Tell them we need immediate reinforcements. What should I tell them about the humans? His communications officer asked. Zextal looked at the tactical display showing human ships, swarming around his crippled vessel like angry insects. Tell them we have encountered something new, something dangerous. The message went out across the galaxy, traveling faster than light to reach the Galactic Council's headquarters. It was a simple report. The humans had rejected standard first contact procedures and demonstrated advanced military capabilities. The Council's response came back within hours. Zextal read it with growing despair. The Council members were not impressed. They saw his failure as incompetence, not as evidence of human strength. They ordered him to retreat and assigned him to patrol duty in an empty sector of space, as his damaged ship limped away from Earth. Zextal sent one final message to the Council. It was a warning that no one would listen to until it was too late. Humans are not like the others, he transmitted. They do not fear us. They do not respect our authority. They fight like they have nothing to lose and everything to protect. We have made a terrible mistake. The message was filed away and forgotten. The Galactic Council had more important things to worry about than one failed first contact mission. They had no idea that they had just declared war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy, back on Earth. Admiral Carter stood in his command center, watching the alien ship disappear into deep space. Around him, his staff celebrated the victory. They had driven off the aliens without losing a single ship. But Carter was not celebrating. He knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would be back, and next time they would bring more ships. Earth had won the first battle, but the war was just starting. He turned to his aide. Send word to all defense stations. You have maybe 6 months before they return in force. We need to be ready. The aide nodded and hurried away. Carter looked back at the main screen, where stars twinkled peacefully in the darkness. Somewhere out there, an entire galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened humanity's home. They had started this war. Now they would finish it. 3 months passed since the alien ship left Earth's solar system. The world had changed completely in that short time. Every news channel talked about the aliens. Every government worked on defense plans. Every factory that could make weapons or spacecraft was running day and night. Dr. Lisa Hayes walked into the Global Defense Council meeting room carrying a thick folder of research. She was a small woman with bright eyes who had spent her whole life studying the possibility of alien life. Now that possibility had become a frightening reality. The room was full of military leaders and scientists from around the world. Admiral Carter sat at the head of the table, looking older than he had 3 months ago. The stress of preparing for war was showing on everyone's faces. What did you find, Doctor? Admiral Carter asked, as Lisa took her seat. Lisa opened her folder and pulled out photographs of alien technology pieces. We recovered 17 different components from the damaged alien ship. What we learned is both good news and bad news.
They
held up a twisted piece of metal that glowed faintly blue. The good news is that their technology is not as advanced as we feared. Their weapons are powerful, but simple. Their shields work on basic energy principles. We can understand how their systems work. And the bad news, asked General Karen Lewis, the head of the new Global Defense Force. The bad news is that they have a lot of it, Lisa continued. The computer data we recovered shows a galactic civilization with thousands of worlds, billions of ships, trillions of beings. We are one small planet facing an entire galaxy. The room fell quiet. Everyone knew Earth was outnumbered, but hearing the actual numbers made it real. Colonel Steve Parker, A tough man with scars on his hands from old battles leaned forward. "Doctor, you said their technology is simple. Does that mean we can beat it?" Lisa nodded slowly. "Their ships are built for intimidation, not real fighting. They rely on size and fear to make enemies surrender. But when someone actually fights back, their weaknesses show. Their ships are slow. Their weapons take time to charge. Their tactics are basic, so we can win," General Lewis asked. "We can win battles," Lisa said carefully. "But they have so many ships that they can lose 100 battles and still have thousands of vessels left. We need to be smarter than them, not just braver." Colonel Parker stood up and walked to the large screen on the wall. It showed a map of nearby star systems based on the alien navigation data. "Then we don't wait for them to come back. We take the fight to them." Admiral Carter frowned. "That's a big risk, Colonel. We don't know what's out there." "We know they're not expecting it," Parker replied. "Every species they've conquered just sat on their home world and waited to die. What if we do the opposite? What if we hit them? First, hit them hard and keep moving before they can respond." The idea was bold and dangerous. Earth had only a few dozen military spacecraft compared to the aliens' thousands. But those ships were fast, well-armed, and crewed by humans who had something the aliens didn't seem to have: the willingness to fight even when the odds were bad. Captain Morrison entered the meeting room as they were discussing the plan. He had been working with engineers to design new ships based on captured alien technology. His uniform was dirty, and he looked tired, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "Admiral, I have good news," he said, taking a seat. "The new ship designs are ready. We've combined our best technology with what we learned from the aliens. The first one launches next week." "Tell us about it," Admiral Carter said. Morrison smiled for the first time in months. "We call her the Defiance. She's half the size of their ship, but 3 times faster. Our weapons can punch through their shields, and our shields can stop their weapons. Most importantly, she can travel faster than light using their own technology." "How many can we build?" General Lewis asked. 12 ships in the first batch, ready in 2 months. After that, we can build 5 new ships every month if we keep all the factories running." Lisa looked at the star map on the wall. "According to the alien data, their nearest military base is here." She pointed to a system 20 light-years away. "It has maybe 50 ships and supplies for the Outer Rim territories." Colonel Parker studied the map. "If we hit that base first, we cut off supplies to a dozen other systems. We'll have to respond, which means pulling ships from other places. And while they're scrambling to respond, we hit the next target," Morrison added. "Keep them off balance. Never let them organize a proper counterattack." Admiral Carter was quiet for a long time, thinking about the plan. It was risky beyond measure. If it failed, Earth would face the aliens with no ships and no defenses. But if they did nothing, the aliens would return with overwhelming force anyway. "How many volunteers do we have for the Space Force?" he asked General Lewis. 12 million applications in the first month," she replied. "We can crew 1,000 ships if we had them." The number was staggering. 12 million people willing to leave Earth and fight in space against impossible odds. It said something about humanity that both impressed and worried Admiral Carter. "The training programs are working well," General Lewis continued. "Fighter pilots adapt quickly to spacecraft. Navy officers understand fleet tactics. Army soldiers are learning space combat. Most importantly, they all want to fight." Dr. Hayes looked up from her notes. "There's something else you should know." The alien communications we intercepted show that they think of war differently than we do. For them, it's about showing superior force until the enemy gives up. They don't expect real resistance. "What do you mean?" Colonel Parker asked. "They've never fought a species that actually wanted to win," Lisa explained. "Every other race they conquered was looking for a way to survive, to minimize losses, to find some compromise. We're the first ones who responded to their demands by shooting at them." Captain Morrison laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "So they have no idea what they're in for." "Exactly," Lisa said. "I think this is just another conquest that went slightly wrong. They don't realize they've started a real war with people who won't quit." The meeting continued for 3 more hours as they planned humanity's first offensive against the galaxy. They discussed targets, tactics, and timing. They talked about what would happen if the plan failed and what would happen if it succeeded. When the meeting ended, Admiral Carter remained in his chair as the others left. General Lewis stayed behind to talk with him. "Paul, are we doing the right thing?" she asked quietly. Carter looked at the star map still glowing on the wall, thousands of points of light representing alien worlds and ships. "I don't know, Karen. But I know what happens if we do nothing. They come back with a bigger fleet and turn Earth into a parking lot. And if we attack first, then maybe we give our children a chance to grow up free." He stood up slowly, feeling every one of his 60 years. "Get the ships ready, General. It's time to show the galaxy what humans do when someone threatens our home." Outside the meeting room, work continued around the clock. Factories built weapons and ships. Training centers prepared crews for space combat. Scientists studied alien technology and improved human designs. The world had united in a way it never had before. Old enemies worked together. Different nations shared resources and knowledge. Everyone understood that this was not about countries or politics. This was about the survival of the human race. In space, the first of the new warships took shape. The Defiance would soon be joined by 11 sister ships, each one carrying the hopes and dreams of an entire world. They were humanity's answer to the alien threat. Built with human hands and human determination, the aliens had made one critical mistake. When they threatened Earth, they assumed humans would react like every other species they had conquered. They expected fear, panic, and eventual surrender. Instead, they got 12 million volunteers and a declaration of war. The human fleet arrived at Kepler 4-4 to be without warning. The 12 ships moved through space like hunters, silent and deadly. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the alien military base grow larger on his screen. The base was massive, built into an asteroid floating in empty space. It had thick armor and powerful weapons designed to stop any attack. For 200 years, no enemy had ever gotten close to it. The aliens who lived there felt completely safe. Lieutenant Commander Ben Davis worked at his tactical station, studying the enemy defenses. He was a quiet man who had spent years planning military operations on Earth. Now he used those same skills against alien targets. "Captain, I count 48 ships docked at the base," he reported. "Most of them are cargo vessels, but there are 12 warships. The base has shield generators here, here, and here." He pointed to locations on the tactical display. Morrison nodded. "How long to break through their shields?" "With concentrated fire from all 12 ships, maybe 10 minutes, Ben replied. "But they'll be shooting back at us the whole time." "We don't give them 10 minutes, Morrison said. He opened a channel to the other ships in his fleet. "All vessels, this is Morrison. Execute attack plan Alpha. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and don't stop shooting until they surrender." The human ships spread out and accelerated toward the base. They moved in a pattern that confused the alien defenders, coming from multiple directions at once. The aliens had never seen this kind of coordinated attack before. On the alien base, Commander Vexai watched the approaching ships with growing alarm. He was an old soldier who had served the Galactic Council for 50 years. He had put down rebellions and conquered primitive worlds, but he had never faced an organized military force. "How many ships?" he asked his sensor operator. 12, confirmed Commander. "Small vessels, unknown design." Vexai studied the tactical display. The ships were tiny compared to Council standards, but they moved with purpose and skill. "Are these the humans from the Outer Rim report?" "Unknown, Commander. Should we try to communicate with them?" Before Vexai could answer, the human ships opened fire. Streams of metal, projectiles, and energy beams struck the base's shields. The first salvo was followed immediately by a second, then a third. The humans fired faster than any species the aliens had ever encountered. "Return fire," Vexai ordered. "Launch all available fighters." The base's massive guns turned toward the human ships, but the humans were already moving. They darted between the slow-moving energy beams like they were dancing. When the alien fighters launched, the human ships split up and engaged them individually. Captain Morrison watched his ships work with pride. Human pilots were different from aliens. They'd learned to fly in Earth's dangerous atmosphere, dodging storms and mountains and other aircraft. Space combat was actually easier for them than flying on Earth. "Target their shield generators," he ordered. "Ben, coordinate the attack." Lieutenant Commander Davis sent targeting data to all 12 ships. The human fleet focused their fire on 3 specific points on the base. The alien shields flashed and sparked under the concentrated bombardment. Within 5 minutes, the first shield generator exploded. The base's protective barrier flickered and weakened. The humans immediately shifted their fire to the exposed sections of the base, tearing through armor that had never been tested in real combat. On the base, alarms screamed as systems failed throughout the structure. Commander Vexai watched his defenses crumble with growing terror. These humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. They were precise, coordinated, and absolutely ruthless. "Send a distress signal to the Council," he ordered. "Tell them we are under attack by unknown forces." "The humans are jamming our communications, Commander," his communications officer reported. "We cannot send long-range messages." The human attack continued for 3 more hours. One by one, the alien warships were destroyed or disabled. The base's weapons fell silent as their power systems were targeted and destroyed. The alien fighters were shot down by human pilots who seemed to predict their every move. Finally, Commander Vexai made the hardest decision of his life. He activated the base's surrender beacon, a signal that no Council base had ever been forced to use. Captain Morrison received the surrender signal and ordered his ships to stop firing. The base was a burning wreck, but it was still intact. More importantly, the humans had captured their first alien military installation. "Send a boarding party," Morrison ordered. "I want all their computer files and any prisoners who want to talk." The victory at Kepler 44b was just the beginning. Within a week, human fleets struck at 3 more alien bases. Each attack followed the same pattern: fast approach, concentrated fire, overwhelming the defenders before they could organize a response. The news spread through the galaxy faster than the human. Ships could travel. Species that had been conquered by the Council decades ago heard whispers of a new force that could defeat Council fleets. Some dismissed it as rumors. Others began to hope. On the crystal world of Zarian Prime, the crystalline hierarchy received reports of mining stations going offline. 3 of their worlds had stopped sending resources to the Council. When they sent ships to investigate, they found human vessels patrolling the systems. The Ethereal Collective, masters of energy manipulation, watched in shock as they are impenetrable. Defense grid was breached by human ships that somehow knew exactly where to strike. The humans had studied captured alien technology and found weaknesses that the aliens themselves didn't know existed. Back at Council headquarters, Grand Admiral Thyrus finally began to take notice. She was an ancient being who had overseen the conquest of 100 worlds. She had never seen anything like the reports coming from the Outer Rim. "How many human ships are there?" she asked her intelligence chief. "Our best estimate is 30 to 40 vessels, Admiral. Small craft, but heavily armed and very fast." "And they have destroyed how many of our bases?" 17 confirmed, Admiral. "Possibly more." "Communications with the Outer Rim are sporadic." Thyrus studied the star map, showing human attack patterns. The humans were not just raiding randomly. They were targeting supply bases, communication stations, and repair facilities. They were cutting the Council's outer territories off from support. "They fight like they understand our logistics," she said quietly. "How is that possible?" Her intelligence chief shifted nervously. "Admiral, we believe they may have captured significant amounts of our data during their attacks. They seem to know where our installations are before we do." The truth was even worse than the Admiral suspected. Every base the humans captured gave them more information about Council operations. Human intelligence officers studied alien computer systems and learned how the Galactic Empire really worked. "Captain." Linda Wright led the intelligence analysis team aboard the captured base at Kepler 44b. She was a former CIA agent who had joined the Space Force when the war started. Her job was to make sense of alien information and find new targets. "The aliens run their empire like a business," she explained to Captain Morrison over a secure channel. Everything is about efficiency and profit. They put their bases in predictable locations to minimize travel time. They use standard designs for everything. Once you understand their system, you can predict where they'll be. This information was sent back to Earth and shared with all human fleets. Within a month, human ships were appearing at alien installations that the Council thought were secret. The attacks were so precise and well-coordinated that some aliens began to believe the humans had spies throughout the galaxy. The psychological impact was enormous. Council forces used to easy victories against frightened primitives found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to know their every move. Some alien commanders began to retreat from their posts without being attacked, afraid that human ships might appear at any moment. On dozens of worlds, conquered species began to whisper about the humans. They heard stories of small, fast ships that could defeat any Council fleet. They learned that somewhere in the galaxy, someone was finally fighting back against their oppressors. The Aquatic Collective, forced to provide water to Council worlds, began to slow their shipments. The Silicon-based Miners Union started having equipment failures that reduced their output. The Peaceful Gardeners, whose agricultural worlds fed half the galaxy, reported crop problems that didn't actually exist. The rebellion was spreading, one world at a time. And at the center of it all were the humans, the species that had refused to surrender when threatened and had declared war on an entire galaxy. Grand Admiral Thyrus realized she was facing something unprecedented in Council history. These humans were not just another primitive species to be conquered. They were a military force that could think, adapt, and coordinate across vast distances. She made a decision that would change the course of the war. Instead of sending small fleets to deal with individual human attacks, she would gather the largest force in Council history and crush the human homeworld once and for all. The order went out across the galaxy. Every available ship was to report to the Council Fleet Assembly Point. It was time to end this human problem permanently. The Proxima Nebula stretched across space like a giant cloud of glowing gas and dust. Inside the nebula, visibility was poor and sensors worked badly. It was the perfect place for an ambush, and Admiral Carter knew it. 200 human ships waited in the nebula's thick gas clouds. They had been there for 3 days, engines quiet, weapons ready. Every captain knew this would be the biggest battle of the war. If they lost here, Earth would face the full might of the Galactic Empire with no defenses left. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the sensor displays. The nebula made everything difficult, but human technology worked. Better in these conditions than alien systems. That was going to be their advantage. Contact bearing 270, reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez. It's big, Captain. Really big. Morrison felt his stomach tighten. The alien fleet was arriving. How many ships? Sensors are having trouble in this soup, but I count at least 400 vessels. Maybe 500. The numbers were worse than they had hoped. The aliens had brought almost their entire fleet to this battle. War leader Kolveth, the Council's best commander, was not taking any chances with the humans. On the alien flagship, Eternal Glory, Kolveth studied the tactical display with satisfaction. His fleet was the largest ever assembled by the Galactic Council. 500 ships carrying enough firepower to destroy a dozen planets. The humans had maybe 50 vessels. This would be over quickly. Deploy the fleet in standard formation, he ordered his tactical officer. We will advance through the nebula and crush any human ships we find. The alien fleet moved forward in a tight formation, their sensors probing the gas clouds for enemy ships. They advanced slowly and carefully, exactly as they had been trained to do for centuries. Admiral Carter watched from his command ship as the alien fleet entered the nebula. All ships. This is Carter. Execute Plan Omega. Make them regret coming here. The human ships struck from 3 directions at once. They had been hiding in the densest parts of the nebula, using the gas clouds to mask their heat signatures. They attacked. It was like ghosts appearing from nowhere. Captain Morrison led the first wave. 12 ships that hit the alien formation's left flank. They fired everything they had at the alien vessels, then disappeared back into the gas clouds before the enemy could respond. Major Tony Clark commanded the fighter squadrons. Small one-man ships that could move through the nebula like fish through water. His pilots had trained in Earth's atmosphere, flying through storms and clouds that were more dangerous than this nebula. They darted between the alien ships, striking at weak points and vanishing before the enemy could target them. "Is insane," Major Clark said over the radio as he led his fighters through a formation of alien cruisers. "They can't see us coming until we're right on top of them." The alien ships tried to return fire, but their weapons were designed for clean space battles. In the nebula's thick environment, their targeting systems struggled to lock onto the fast-moving human vessels. War Leader Kolvath watched his neat formation fall apart as human ships appeared and disappeared like hunting predators. "How are they moving so freely in this nebula?" he demanded. "Denon, War Leader," his tactical officer replied. "Our sensors cannot track them effectively in these conditions." "Then we push through," Kolvath decided. "All ships, maximum speed. We break through to clear space where we can fight properly." But the humans had anticipated this move. As the alien fleet tried to push through the nebula, they found human ships waiting at every turn. The nebula that hindered alien sensors seemed to help the humans, who moved through it like they had mapped every gas cloud and dust particle. Commander Susan Bell intercepted alien communications from her position aboard the intelligence ship Listener. She was a former Navy cryptographer who had learned to break alien codes during the first months of the war. "Admiral, I'm picking up alien distress calls," she reported. "They're requesting reinforcements from the home fleet." "Can you block there?" "Transmissions?" Admiral Carter asked. "Already doing it, sir. But there's something else. I can broadcast their communications across the galaxy on open channels. Let everyone hear how their invincible fleet is getting beaten." Carter smiled grimly. "Do it. Let the whole galaxy listen." The psychological warfare began immediately. Across hundreds of worlds, alien communication systems picked up the panicked calls from Kolvath's fleet. For the first time in Galactic History, Council forces were heard begging for help, admitting defeat, and reporting massive losses. The effect was immediate. On the mining world of Kepler 186F, the enslaved population rose in rebellion when they heard that the Council fleet was being destroyed. On Gliasex 67C, the peaceful gardeners stopped all food shipments to Council worlds. Across the galaxy, the carefully maintained order began to crumble. The battle in the nebula continued for 18 hours. The aliens had superior numbers, but the humans had superior tactics. Every time the Council forces tried to regroup, human ships would strike from a new direction. Captain Morrison found himself leading charge after charge against alien formations. His ship's armor was scorched and his crew was exhausted, but they kept fighting. "They're bigger than us," he told his crew over the intercom, "but we're faster, smarter, and we want this more than they do." The turning point came when Major Clark's fighters discovered the alien flagship. Eternal Glory was massive and heavily armed, but it was also slow and easy to target. Clark coordinated an attack by every fighter squadron at once. "All fighters, this is Clark. We're going after their command ship. Hit it with everything you have." 50 human fighters swarmed the alien flagship like angry bees. They targeted the ship's sensors, communications, and weapon systems. The massive vessel tried to defend itself, but its weapons were too big and slow to hit the small, fast fighters. War Leader Kolvath watched his command ship fall apart around him. Systems failed throughout the vessel as human fighters tore through his defenses. His communications were down, his weapons were offline, and his fleet was scattered throughout the nebula. "War Leader, we should retreat," his tactical officer suggested desperately. Kolvath looked at the tactical display showing the remains of his once mighty fleet. Half his ships were destroyed or disabled. The others were scattered and confused. Unable to coordinate their efforts in the nebula's chaotic environment? "No," he said firmly, "the Council does not retreat. All ships, ramming speed. If we cannot defeat them with weapons, we will destroy them with our ships." It was a desperate final gamble. The remaining alien vessels charged straight at the human fleet, intending to ram them and cause mutual destruction. It was the kind of fanatical last stand that might have worked against other enemies, but the humans were ready for this too. As the alien ships approached, the human vessels used their superior speed and maneuverability to dodge the ramming attempts. Instead of meeting the aliens head-on, they let them pass by, then hit them with concentrated fire from behind. The alien ships, committed to their ramming runs, could not change course quickly enough to avoid the human counterattack. One by one, they were destroyed or disabled by the very tactic that was supposed to guarantee victory. When the battle finally ended, the nebula was full of wreckage and debris. Of the 500 ships that had entered with war leader Kolvath, fewer than 50 escaped. Human fleet had lost only 12 vessels, and most of those were damaged rather than destroyed. Admiral Carter surveyed the battlefield with a mixture of pride and sadness. They had won a great victory, but the cost in lives on both sides was enormous. He opened a channel to all human ships. "This is Admiral Carter to all vessels, and the alien fleet has been defeated, but this is not the end of the war. This is the beginning of the end. Every species in the galaxy now knows that the Council can be beaten. Every world that wants freedom has seen what determination can accomplish." The message was broadcast not just to human ships, but across the galaxy on every frequency Commander Bell could access. It was heard on 1,000 worlds by 1 billion. Beings who had never imagined that the Galactic Council could be defeated. The Battle of Proxima. Nebula became the turning point of the war. Not because of the ships destroyed or the tactical victory achieved, but because of the message it sent. The Council's aura of invincibility was broken forever. War leader Kolvath's flagship limped away from the battle, badly damaged and barely functional. He sent one final message to the Council before his communications failed completely. "The humans cannot be defeated by conventional means. They fight like demons and think like generals. We have lost more than ships today. We have lost the fear that held our empire together. Across the galaxy, the revolution began in earnest. The humans had shown that resistance was possible. Now it was time for every oppressed species to choose: continue to serve their conquerors or fight for their freedom. The galaxy would never be the same." 6 months after the Battle of Proxima Nebula, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The Galactic Council's empire was falling apart like a house built on sand. Every day brought news of more worlds declaring independence or joining the human-led alliance. Admiral Morrison, promoted after his victory at Proxima, stood on the bridge of his new flagship Liberation as it approached the crystal world of Zarian Prime. Below them, the planet's surface sparkled like a jewel. The crystalline hierarchy had requested human protection after declaring independence from the Council. "It's beautiful," said Commander Amy Rodriguez, now his first officer. She had been with Morrison since the beginning of the war, and like everyone else, she was amazed at how quickly things had changed. "And free," Morrison replied. "That makes it even more beautiful." The liberation of former Council worlds was happening faster than anyone had expected. Species that had been enslaved for decades were rising up everywhere. The humans provided military support when needed, but mostly they just had to show up. The alien overlords usually fled without fighting. On Earth, Dr. Lisa Hayes worked in her new office at the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Center. The building had been constructed in just 3 months to handle the flood of alien species wanting to establish diplomatic relations with humanity. Today she was meeting with representatives from the Artisan Guild, species of master craftsmen, who had been forced to build weapons for the Council. They were small, delicate beings with 6 arms that could create the most beautiful sculptures in the galaxy. "We want to thank humanity for freeing us," said Master Artisan Zintel through a translation device. "For 50 years, we were forced to build instruments of war. Now we can create beauty again." Lisa smiled warmly. "What will you do now that you're free?" "We want to build something for Earth," Zintel replied. "A monument to commemorate the species that taught the galaxy how to fight for freedom." Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. The peaceful gardeners wanted to create special crops that could feed both humans and aliens. The nomadic traders offered to establish trade routes between Earth and friendly worlds. The wise archivists promised to share their vast libraries of galactic knowledge, but not everyone was ready to surrender to the new order. Grand Admiral Thyrus had gathered the remaining Council forces at their final stronghold, a massive space station called Dominion Point. From there, she sent out desperate messages trying to rally support. Citizens of the galaxy, her broadcasts declared the humans are a plague that threatens all civilized life. They bring chaos and destruction wherever they go. We must unite against this menace before it spreads further. The response was not what she expected. Instead of support, she received message after message from former Council worlds explaining why they would not fight. The aquatic Glytov sent a simple reply. In 1 year under human protection, we have built more schools than we did in 50 years under Council rule. We will not fight our liberators. The Silicon-based Miners Union was more direct. The Council treated us as equipment. The humans treat us as people. The choice is obvious. Even some of Thyrus's own officers began to question their orders. Captain Felter of the battleship Endless Victory was typical of many Council commanders. He had served loyally for 30 years, but the reports coming from human-controlled space troubled him. "Admiral," he said during a private meeting, "the humans are not behaving like conquerors. They're not enslaving worlds or demanding tribute. They're actually helping species rebuild their civilizations." Thyrus dismissed his concerns with a wave of her hand. "It's a trick, Captain. They're trying to make us lower our guard. Soon they will show their true nature." But Captain Felter had access to intelligence reports that painted a different picture. Human fleets were protecting trade routes, not raiding them. Human scientists were sharing technology, not hoarding it. Human diplomats were negotiating treaties, not demanding surrender. General Karen Lewis arrived at Dominion Point with the largest human fleet ever assembled. 300 ships surrounded the Council's last stronghold, but they did not attack. Instead, Lewis sent a message to Grand Admiral Thyrus. "This is General Lewis of the Earth Defense Force. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender now, and you will be treated with dignity. Continue fighting and face the consequences of your choices." The message was broadcast on all frequencies, so that every being in the system could hear it. It was not a threat of destruction or enslavement. It was an offer of mercy to people who had shown no mercy to others. On Dominion Point, Thyrus faced a choice that no Council leader had ever confronted. Her empire was gone. Her allies had abandoned her, and her enemies offered peace instead of revenge. "We could fight," she told her remaining commanders. "We could make them pay a price for their victory." Captain Felter spoke for many when he replied, "To what purpose, Admiral? Our empire is finished. Fighting now would only mean more death for no gain." The surrender came not as a dramatic final battle, but as a simple communication. "This is Grand Admiral Thyrus to General Lewis. The Council forces accept your terms. We request safe passage for our personnel and ships." The war was over. 1 year later, Admiral Carter stood before the newly formed Interspecies Council on the neutral world of Haven. Representatives from 200 species filled the Great Hall, including former Council leaders who had chosen cooperation over exile. "We didn't want this war," Carter said in his address to the Council. "You started it by threatening our home and our people. But now that it's over, we want to build something better than what came before." The new galactic government was nothing like the old Council. Instead of a hierarchy based on military strength, it was a voluntary alliance based on mutual respect. Each species had one vote regardless of their size or power. Disputes were settled through negotiation, not force. Captain Morrison now commanded a mixed-species crew aboard the exploration vessel New Horizons. His first officer was Kexron, a former Council tactical officer who had defected during the war. His science officer was Dr. Zintel from the Artisan Guild. His chief engineer was a silicon-based being who could repair any machine in the galaxy, as they prepared to explore uncharted regions beyond the old Council borders. Kexron asked Morrison a question that had puzzled him since the war ended. "Captain, why did humans fight so hard for species you had never met? Your people died protecting worlds you had never seen. I do not understand this behavior." Morrison looked out at the stars visible through the ship's main view screen. Somewhere out there were billions of beings living in freedom because humanity had refused to accept that oppression was normal. "Because someone had to," he said simply. "Because it was right, because we could." The former council officer nodded slowly, beginning to understand something about humans that the galaxy was still learning. Their deadliest weapon had never been their technology or their tactics. It was their refusal to accept that injustice was inevitable. Dr. Hayes published her final report on the war 1 year after it ended. The document became required reading in schools across the galaxy. Its conclusion was simple but profound. The Galactic Council fell not because humans were better fighters, but because they were better people. When faced with a choice between their own safety and doing what was right, they chose justice. This decision changed not just their fate, but the destiny of every free being in the galaxy. The Free Galactic Alliance grew stronger each year. New species joined regularly, drawn by the promise of equality and protection. Trade flourished between worlds that had been enemies for centuries. Science and art bloomed as beings were free to pursue knowledge instead of serving overlords. Earth became the symbolic heart of this new civilization. But it was not the capital of an empire. It was the birthplace of an idea that all intelligent beings deserved freedom, dignity, and the chance to determine their own future. The galaxy had learned that humans were indeed the deadliest species they had ever encountered, but not because of their weapons or their warriors. They were deadly to tyranny, to oppression. It's the idea that might makes right. In trying to conquer one small blue planet, the Galactic Council had awakened something that would transform the entire galaxy. They had started a war with humanity's conscience, and conscience had won. The stars themselves seemed brighter now that they shone on a galaxy of free worlds, and at the center of it all was a species that had taught the universe a simple truth. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is refuse to give up hope.